Warning, the episodes we're about to cover could make even the toughest sea sponge cringe. These are the times where Bikini Bottom sank just a little too low. Like this one-course meal, an episode that gets dark fast and somehow manages to make Mr. Krabs one of the most cold-hearted villains in SpongeBob history. We're kicking things off with old Eugene literally taking a bath in his money because he's gotta flaunt his obsession with cash every chance he gets, you know? But this money-soaked bliss is rudely interrupted when the Krusty Krab goes courtesy of Plankton and his latest explosive plan to snag the Krabby Patty formula. Plankton's got SpongeBob and Krabs trapped and things are looking schnazzy for him until Pearl shows up and Plankton shrieks like a toddler trapped in a haunted house.
Call off your daughter, Krabs! Call her off!
Turns out our pint-sized villain has a deep-seated phobia of whales, thanks to some traumatic childhood memories of watching his whole-ass family being devoured by one. Mr. Krabs immediately sees this as a perfect way to mentally break his tiny rival. He takes it upon himself to dress up as Pearl and straight-up terrorize Plankton, keeping him in a state of sheer paranoia for 2 whole weeks. That's right, 2 weeks of non-stop anxiety attacks, hallucinations, and nightmares of being swallowed alive. Yikes, emotional damage much? By the time Plankton's laying down in the middle of the road wishing for a bus to end his misery, it's clear this episode has taken a turn into some seriously messed up territory. Even SpongeBob, sweet, clueless SpongeBob, is disturbed enough to beg Mr. Krabs to stop torturing Plankton. But does Mr. Krabs listen? Nope. He's too busy gloating over his twisted victory. So SpongeBob decides to throw Plankton a lifeline by revealing Mr. Krabs' secret fear, mimes.
Make it stop!
Yes, really. Krabs is shit scared of mimes, people. This is almost too good. Armed with this new intel, Plankton launches his own revenge plot by hiring a mime to terrorize Mr. Krabs. But in the end, it's SpongeBob who has to play peacekeeper, using holographic whales to scare Plankton off and secure the formula once again.
Get me out of here!
We wrap things up with Krabs still being harassed by the mime, proving that karma sometimes comes in the form of silent street performers. This episode's dark vibes and Mr. Krabs' relentless cruelty make it one of those what were they thinking moments in the series. And you'll see just how bad it gets in Can You Spare a Dime, where Mr. Krabs' twisted obsession with money turns Squidward's life into a living nightmare. Krabs is doing what he usually does best, obsessing over money. As he's busy counting up the day's profit, his penny-pinching heart stops when he notices his beloved first dime is missing.
Where is it? Where is it?
So what does Krabs do? Krabs pins the blame on Squidward since he's the one behind the register all day. Squidward, however, ain't having it, squeezing Mr. Krabs' eyes in a fit of rage before quitting on the spot. Oh, Squidward, always one squeeze away from throwing in the towel. As Squidward storms off into the great wide world, SpongeBob tries to talk some sense into him. But when he sees how dead serious Squidward is about leaving his crabby nightmare behind to chase bigger dreams, our spongy boy lets him go. Squidward's ambitions are sky high, but fast forward a bit and
Spare change.
well, reality hits low hard. Things only get worse when his box gets repossessed.
Oh.
Seeing Squidward reduced to literal street trash tugs at SpongeBob's soft spot, so he brings him in and spoils him with breakfast and bed and bubble baths. But of course, months pass, and instead of job hunting, Squidward's treating SpongeBob like his personal butler.
Here you go, Your Majesty.
Gary tries to warn SpongeBob that he's being played, but SpongeBob's too deep in denial to hear it. Eventually, even SpongeBob reaches his breaking point. He tries nudging Squidward in the right direction, serving him a bowl of alphabet soup spelling out "get a job," and pretending that a newspaper full of job listings is actually an allergy trigger.
Get that away from me! You know I'm allergic to newsprint!
It's subtle, and by that I mean painfully obvious. But Squidward isn't budging. He's fully committed to the freeloader lifestyle, so SpongeBob does what any fed-up friend would do. He pushes Squidward's bed straight out the wall and drags him back to the Krusty Krab like a parent hauling a misbehaving kid back to the car. But Krabs, being Krabs, refuses to believe the dime is the one. He goes so far as to toss all the dimes SpongeBob offers right back at him. SpongeBob finally snaps, launching into a full-blown rage fit. That's when the so-called first dime falls out of Krabs' pocket. In the end, Squidward gets his job back, but Krabs is already suspicious that he somehow planted the dime there, starting another argument right on cue. And poor SpongeBob, he just slides back into his maid outfit, ready to deal with whatever ridiculousness comes next. So maybe what happens in Squid's visit is some sweet revenge, because things take a twisted turn when SpongeBob's dedication to his friendship with Squidward reaches uncomfortable new heights. Another thrilling day at the Krusty Krab. So exciting, in fact, that Squidward is lamenting his evening plans. SpongeBob, on the other hand, is desperate for some quality time and invites Squidward over, but Squidward has zero interest in hanging out at what he calls SpongeBob's dirty little hovel. Ouch. Meanwhile, Patrick suggests a foolproof way to get Squidward over to the pineapple. That's all the encouragement SpongeBob needs, and he immediately homes in on Squidward's vacuum cleaner. While Squidward's cooking up his dinner, SpongeBob slips in and swipes the vacuum. It's the perfect excuse to lure him over. But when Squidward arrives to retrieve it, he's not prepared for what awaits him: a life-sized replica of his own house inside SpongeBob's pineapple. The weirdness ramps up as Squidward realizes that even his friggin' rash cream and mother-made pillow have been replicated. If that wasn't unsettling enough, SpongeBob pops up, causing Squidward to slip on the rash cream and smack his head into the toilet. Good times. Great visit so far. When Squidward wakes up, he hopes it's all just a bad dream. But nope, he's still trapped inside this warped version of his house. Desperate to escape, he lies about needing the bathroom again, then sprints upstairs to look for his vacuum. What he finds is a gallery room filled with 492 portraits of himself. That's right, SpongeBob somehow collected 492 images of Squidward's glorious mug. Creeped out and enraged, Squidward rifles through the closet until he finally grabs his vacuum, only to be clobbered by it as he tumbles down the stairs. Of course, that's how it bloody goes. Finally, making his way outside, Squidward's relief is short-lived when he sees his own house up in flames, reduced to nothing but vapor. Turns out his casserole was left in the oven and his entire house is now toast, literally. SpongeBob, ever the optimist, invites him to stay at the pineapple while his house is fixed. Cut to the final scene where Squidward is now living inside SpongeBob's pineapple while SpongeBob and Gary camp outside like it's the most normal arrangement ever. Unless we're talking about the Krusty Krab in Patty Hype, where things go from dead quiet to a frenzied mess in record time. It all begins at the dustiest, most desolate version of the Krusty Krab you could imagine, because it's been 36 days without a single customer. Krabs is losing his mind trying to drum up business, and it only gets worse when the first customer in weeks, a starving fish who's practically crawling on the floor, turns down a Krabby Patty because
It's boring!
you know things are bad when even a starving guy would rather keep crawling for something more exciting. Desperate for a gimmick, Mr. Krabs' attempts to attract a crowd are just sad. Burying himself alive doesn't exactly scream fine dining. SpongeBob keeps trying to pitch an idea though, only to be ignored over and over again. Finally, he shows Mr. Krabs a green patty, which looks more like an expired science experiment than food. Krabs nearly incinerates it before SpongeBob reveals his big idea: pretty patties, burgers in 6 designer colors. Krabs and Squidward react about as well as you'd expect, mocking the patties like they're the worst idea since New Coke. Unfazed, SpongeBob takes his rainbow patty dream and goes solo, setting up shop in front of his pineapple with Patrick's help. At first, nobody bites, literally. But just when SpongeBob's ready to call it quits, a passerby spots a purple pretty patty and decides it's the best thing since sliced kelp. Within no time, business is booming, with thousands of customers lining up for a taste of the trendy Technicolor burgers. The Krusty Krab, meanwhile, is a ghost town, and Mr. Krabs is about ready to pull his claws out when he sees the ridiculous success of SpongeBob's new venture. Pretty Patties have people in a spin, so much so that SpongeBob and Patrick start giving away the money they're making because they don't know what else to do with it. Now that's a sentence you'd never hear Krabs say in a million years. Mr. Krabs, suddenly humble, manages to convince SpongeBob to trade the Pretty Patty business for the key to the Krusty Krab, which SpongeBob eagerly accepts. I don't know how this crustacean gets away with this shit. The next day, as Mr. Krabs gears up to rake in the profits, the Pretty Patty's true nature reveals itself. Each burger turns the eater the same color as the patty they chose. Glow-in-the-dark tongues, neon blue bodies, you name it. Krabs tries to flee, but the pissed-off multicolor mob chases him down, leaving a rainbow streak in their wake. As he runs for the Krusty Krab, he suddenly remembers he gave the key to SpongeBob, who's blissfully unaware of the chaos outside as he listens to the squeak of his beloved pickles. Mr. Krabs is left pounding on the door, begging SpongeBob to let him in, while the mob closes in to make him pay for every glowing tongue and color-changing mishap. But SpongeBob remains just as clueless when he's behind the wheel in Boat Smarts, where his driving tips go off the rails in the most spectacular fashion. This time, it's wrapped in the form of an educational boating safety video, courtesy of Mrs. Puff and a hilariously long-named organization, COBBUTKSBSPOTRAOOBAT. Basically, just a bunch of concerned citizens who just want SpongeBob off the road. Can you blame them? Mrs. Puff is introducing two drivers, Squidward, the epitome of boat driving excellence, and SpongeBob, the poster child for why you need insurance. It starts innocently enough, with Squidward demonstrating how to fill a tire to the exact air pressure. Then there's SpongeBob, who decides that too much air is a challenge rather than a warning, resulting in a tire explosion that crushes half of Squidward's boat. If this isn't a metaphor for how wrecked Squidward's life is, I don't know what is. Next, we dive into the importance of buckling up. Squidward demonstrates how it's done while stopping calmly at a traffic light. But just as you're thinking, SpongeBob appears, zipping around like a deranged drunkard with no bloody seatbelt in sight. He promptly crashes into Squidward, sending himself flying straight into a spiked steamroller, and yes, it's just as horrifying as it sounds. The lesson continues with Squidward adjusting his mirrors like a model citizen, while SpongeBob decides it's the perfect time to multitask like he's on some kind of circus act, balancing the steering wheel with his leg and adjusting the mirror. As expected, chaos ensues. He hits multiple pedestrians without a care in the world and blinds Squidward with a beam of light, causing him to crash into a wall. It's a miracle Bikini Bottom even has a functioning road system at this point. And what's a boating safety video without a little PSA on not eating or drinking while driving? Squidward is once again the gold standard, keeping his eyes glued to the road. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is munching on a Krabby Patty, reading a magazine, and saying hi to everyone like he's on a Sunday stroll. This goes about as well as you'd expect, culminating in a giant pileup and sends Squidward flying into a massive car wreck. SpongeBob, totally oblivious, cruises away with a cheery, "Looks like you guys forgot your boat smarts," as Mrs. Puff and Squidward sit amidst the wreckage looking like they've aged 50 years. Mrs. Puff's exasperated, "Never mind," at the end perfectly sums up the episode. It's not a boating safety video, it's a compilation of SpongeBob demonstrating everything you should never ever do if you value your life, which might actually feel safer than being stuck in the madness of Pineapple Invasion, where SpongeBob's approach to home protection is about as effective as his driving. So Krabs is feeling paranoid as heck, knowing that Plankton's back on his formula-stealing game.
Mr. Stinky!
But this time, instead of fortifying the Krusty Krab or hiding it in, a vault, he decides to shove it away in SpongeBob's house. Mr. Krabs warns him not to let anything suspicious get near it. And by anything, he basically means Plankton. Plankton catches wind of this and decides to take his heist skills directly to SpongeBob's front door.
Perhaps I could just come inside for a minute and demonstrate our fine snail products.
Plankton, realizing that sneaking in might require some, let's say, extra steps, Krabs decides to go under the radar and straight to SpongeBob's best friend, Gary the Snail. Yep, Gary. Poor old Gary. It's funny the first few times, but then it goes on a little too long. When SpongeBob finally catches on, you're half expecting something big, but nah, he just keeps repeating his orders to Gary to guard the formula without a clue of what's actually happening. Just when he thinks he's finally about to grab the formula, SpongeBob's back in his it's all secure mentality, completely unaware of all the chaos he missed, which is exactly the frustration you'll feel with Plankton's regular. Right off the bat, we find Plankton wallowing in yet another slow day at the Chum Bucket, his empty restaurant echoing with despair. But in strolls Nat, a fish looking for one of Plankton's chum sticks.
I'd like one of your chumsticks.
Plankton's pretty much in shock at having a customer who's not, there by accident. And when Nat declares he actually likes the chumstick and plans to come back for more, Plankton loses his shit. Here's a fish who somehow prefers his questionable chum concoction to the world-famous Krabby Patty. And suddenly, Plankton's feeling like the king of fast food. Now, Plankton spends the entire next day camped out by the door, ready to serve his one and only regular customer, Nat. After an endless wait and a power nap, Nat finally shows, eats his daily chumstick, and Plankton's fully convinced he's on the rise to food empire glory. But then, he makes the epic mistake of rubbing it in Krabs' face over at the Krusty Krab. After all, it's one thing for Krabs to have all of Bikini Bottom munching on Krabby Patties, but if Plankton has even one loyal customer, it somehow drives Krabs bloody bonkers. So Mr. Krabs concocts a plan to win Nat back.
Boy, front and center!
Yes, sir!
Sending SpongeBob on a relentless mission to shove Krabby Patties down Nat's throat. But Nat's having none of that crap. He's all about that chum life, and Krabs is falling apart at the seams. Realizing that he's up against some mysterious, horrifying power that makes chum actually edible, Krabs gets a little, desperate. He tries to break into the Chum Bucket to steal Plankton's recipe. Nothing says healthy competition like good old-fashioned recipe theft. Of course, Plankton catches him in the act and traps Krabs under a massive spoon. SpongeBob arrives trying to talk sense into everyone, but he ends up under the spoon trap as well. Now we've got Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob just chilling helpless, waiting to see how things shake out. Now Nat shows up at the Chum Bucket for one last bite, but instead of joyfully chowing down, he throws his money at Karen and declares he's done. Turns out the chum addiction came with a heavy price, like multiple trips to the ER for stomach pumping. Nat's forced to quit Plankton's cuisine, leaving Plankton devastated once again. But plot twist?
The deal was that I paid Nat to eat your chum so you'd quit your constant complaining.
Plankton's entire customer success was one giant pity play orchestrated by his computer wife. The heartbreak is real, bras. As Plankton spirals into a depression, declaring himself a waste of a lower life form, Krabs is absolutely delighted from under the spoon, reveling in Plankton's misery like it's the best thing he's seen in years. It's a quick reminder of how this whole Krabs and Plankton feud sometimes crosses the line into pure cringe. But trust me, the paper finds a way to crank up the cringe even further with SpongeBob's over-the-top enthusiasm for a literal piece of garbage. It all starts innocently enough. Squidward's out in his yard doing what he does best, looking for ways to relax while simultaneously being low-key annoyed by SpongeBob's mere existence. But SpongeBob sees potential in that discarded gum wrapper, and he's thrilled to have it. Hey, whatever gets your goat, buddy. He asks if Squidward wants it back, but Squidward laughs it off as garbage and practically begs SpongeBob to take it off his hands forever. What Squidward thought was trash, SpongeBob now treats like his new favorite toy. While Squidward's inside preparing for a lazy day with his clarinet and some light reading, he hears SpongeBob's joyful laughter drifting from next door.
What could he possibly be doing with that paper?
Curiosity, and probably irritation, gets the better of him, and he peeks outside to see SpongeBob in the middle of a proper one-man show with his newfound treasure. SpongeBob's using the paper as a cape, pretending he's a superhero. Then he's a jungle explorer, complete with Tarzan calls. The wrapper becomes a parachute, a bullfighter's cape, even a mustache for various impressions. It's ridiculous, but the guy's having the time of his life. Squidward tries everything to block out the noise, but SpongeBob's endless laughter is basically surround sound. He tries to keep reading, even painting, but every time he looks out, SpongeBob's finding some wild new use for the wrapper. Squidward's jealousy levels are spiking, and he finally admits to himself that the wrapper looks kind of fun. In true Squidward fashion, he goes from zero to obsessed. He tries to show SpongeBob up, grabbing random objects to prove he can have fun too, but SpongeBob just uses the wrapper to do it better. When Squidward's using a dummy for laughs, SpongeBob makes a dummy out of the paper and gets the whole neighborhood cracking up. Squidward even whips out his big guns like his car and clarinet, but SpongeBob's paper improvisations, like using it as a helicopter and jazzing up Mary Had a Little Lamb, are on another level.
I'm partial to doing it in the key of A minor myself.
At last, Squidward's had it. He damn well needs that paper. He's begging, pleading, but SpongeBob's holding strong to Squidward's earlier words about never wanting it back.
No matter how much I may beg and plead and cry, don't give that paper back to me. Ever.
In desperation, Squidward tries trading for it. He offers SpongeBob a rubber band, even his most prized possessions. SpongeBob's tempted, but still, he remembers his promise. But then Squidward goes all in, giving away literally everything he owns, including his shirt and house. This is some OCD shit on another level. SpongeBob, finally convinced, agrees to the trade. Squidward's thrilled for about 2 seconds. Turns out Squidward's just not SpongeBob. Well, you don't say, huh? Definitely didn't see that one coming. No matter how he twists, folds, or plays with the paper, he can't squeeze out a single ounce of fun. While SpongeBob made it look all easy with his endless imagination, Squidward realizes he doesn't have the optimism or creativity to make it work. He's left with nothing but the stark reality that he just traded his entire life for a crumpled piece of trash. And as if to rub salt in the wound, Patrick strolls by and takes the wrapper without a second thought. Then he uses it as a gum wrapper, leaving Squidward even more broke than when he started. Which is fitting because Plankton's army somehow manages to lower the bar even further with a desperate plan that's as broke as Squidward. We'll kick things off at the Krusty Krab, where Mr. Krabs is celebrating the 25th anniversary of the silver jubilee of Plankton's first pathetic attempt to nab the Krabby Patty formula. The irony? Plankton hasn't even come close in all those years. As if on cue, a little robot rolls up to the counter, orders some chili coral bites, and hands Krabs a $1 bill. But plot twist, Plankton's hiding inside the bill, ready to snag that formula. Or not. Plankton's big reveal is basically ruined when he realizes he has no exit plan. Krabs takes the advantage and sends Plankton down the pipes with a good old flush. I swear, Plankton is the world's worst criminal mastermind. Defeated, Plankton slinks back to the chum bucket, whining to Karen about his latest loss. Karen, the only brains in this duo, suggests he get some henchmen to help him out. After a hilarious attempt at recruiting tough guys at a nightclub that only ends in rejection, Plankton suddenly remembers he's got thousands of relatives out there. So he sends out the call for a family reunion, expecting an army of evil geniuses. What does he get?
Hey, look, everybody! It's Cousin Plankton!
A full-on parade of hillbilly Plankton led by his cousin Clem. These aren't the Einstein-like masterminds Plankton dreamed of, but Plankton, desperate as ever, pitches the plan to his clueless cousins, offering them all the root beer they can drink if they help. Somehow it works, and soon Plankton's army is swarming the Krusty Krab. They trap Mr. Krabs and Squidward in the bathroom, classy move team, and Plankton, with the brains of his backwater army, heads for the safe. Finally, he's got the secret formula in his little green hand, and Mr. Krabs looks genuinely rattled. He tries one last-ditch warning, calling the formula something not meant for mortal eyes. But Plankton is riding high on his victory, ignoring the ominous tone he reads the ingredients out loud. A pinch of salt, 3 teaspoons of chopped onions, a cup of love, and 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton. Wait, hold up. Freshly ground what? Yeah, you heard that right. The formula calls for your kind, Plankton. Plankton's look of triumph evaporates faster than you can say fake recipe as the horrifying realization sinks in. The guy is shook, and his family is too. Well, most of them. Cousin Clem can't read, so he's just standing there like a clueless knob. Mr. Krabs, meanwhile, is just standing there with that smug gotcha face, knowing he won this round. After the dust settles, Squidward asks the obvious question if freshly ground plankton is really the secret ingredient. But Krabs reassures his crew that it was all a decoy, laughing about how Plankton and his hillbilly family are probably halfway home by now, and then Squidward guesses the real location of the formula. Krabs panics, and in typical sitcom fashion, he's left sprinting home screaming, "Curse you, Squidward!" But if you're not down for an episode that mixes trickery with some pretty intense family shame, maybe give Plankton's army a pass. It's a roast on every level. Which only gets worse in Penny Foolish, where Mr. Krabs' obsession with a single coin reaches new heights of ridiculousness. We open at the local bargain mart where Mr. Krabs is stocking up on every discount item he can grab, because we all know this crab wouldn't be caught dead paying full price for anything. As he's walking out, he spots Spongebob on the ground picking up something. It's a little shiny, and just like that, Krabs is convinced it's a penny. And if there's one thing Mr. Krabs loves more than pinching pennies, it's hoarding them. From here, it's like a fever dream where everywhere Krabs looks, he sees pennies. He's fully lost it, stewing in jealousy that Spongebob found this free penny while he has to work for every cent. There's no way he's letting this injustice slide, so he decides he's going to get that penny one way or another. At the Krusty Krab the next day, Krabs tries to weasel the penny out of Spongebob, asking if he found anything special lately. Still, Krabs presses on, making Spongebob empty every single one of his pockets and even shakes him upside down for good measure. This little stunt results in SpongeBob's brain literally falling out of his head, causing a whole new disaster as they chase it down like some unhinged game of tag. Talk about losing your head. And guess what? Still no penny. When Krabs realizes direct methods aren't working, he decides to go big and builds a full-blown theater in the back of the Krusty Krab, charging exactly 1 penny for admission. Surely SpongeBob's gotta cough up the penny now, right? Nope, SpongeBob is completely penniless. So Mr. Krabs has a mini meltdown and tears the whole ass theater down. But he's not done yet. Oh no. Next up is the Krusty Krab semi-annual charity night, another over-the-top scheme that features Mr. Krabs putting on a performance begging for a single penny to end his suffering. Jeez, the drama, bruh. SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, still doesn't have a penny or a clue, and Krabs breaks down on stage. Later that night, Krabs hits rock bottom. Like, literally hits the floor as he crawls through SpongeBob's house with a metal detector hunting for that imaginary penny. SpongeBob finds him, and Mr. Krabs has no choice but to admit his crime, confessing he was after that penny all along. SpongeBob finally reveals that what he picked up wasn't a penny, it was a dried up piece of gum he wanted to keep for his gum collection. At first, Mr. Krabs is stunned, but he seems relieved, until SpongeBob casually mentions that underneath the gum was a $500 bill, which he's left lying on the floor. But anyway, I'm just a guy who likes cartoons. Catch you in the next video.